So hi everyone and welcome to the first professional development session of 2020. This is a new project that we've started to extend the services that we have to our members. And from time to time, we'll be offering these webinars on a range of topics and anything that can be of assistance to our members or help you tackle any issues that you are facing. So for this first webinar, I've asked Lloyd Phillips to join me. I'm Lindy Buerta, and we're going to be discussing working remotely. So both of us are journalists. I've got the addition of being a communication specialist as well. I work very remotely. I live in Mpumalanga in South Africa, and I'm half an hour outside of town, so if I need anything done. And then 300 kilometers from what I call the hub, which is where Johannesburg is, which is where most of the media houses sit, where most of the conferences are. So that's quite a distance, but I've been doing this for about 3 years, and I must say it gets better and better. So from my side, I can definitely say it's more of a blessing than a curse. What about you, Lloyd?
Hi everybody, Sanbonani from the Kingdom of the Zulus in South Africa. My name is Lloyd Phillips. Hi Lindy. Hi fellow IFAJs. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I actually do really enjoy working from home. I've been with Farmers Weekly as a full-time journalist since January 2003. And from the start, I worked from home. I was employed especially for that reason, because our head office is in Johannesburg. My editor at the time wanted me to work in KwaZulu-Natal, and the days of dial-up modems, that was fun, and posting photographs as well to get them all, sending them by courier to Johannesburg. But yes, I've been working from home for 17 years straight.
Right, so sorry, I'm just getting this image of you Korean photos, Johannesburg, out of my head. It must have been quite a challenge those days to do remote working, certainly harder than what it is today.
Yeah, and obviously I think there's the older journos will even say they didn't even have that, I don't know, the benefit of couriers perhaps. I'm not sure. They would have probably had to travel and then come back and have their photos developed at head office.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move into the slides now. So what I generally find is, sorry, oh gosh, I'm still recording.
That's okay.
I can't seem to move. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, sorry, Lloyd.
No, don't stress.
Oh, is this thing going that way? Okay.
By the way, every now and again, your voice becomes, I don't know if it happens to you, it becomes a bit sort of metallic-y.
Oh, really?
And you are almost like you going over a whole lot of corrugations. It happened. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I could hear you clearly. I could hear what you were saying. It was just, it had that interference.
Okay. I had a notepad on my keyboard, so I've just taken it off.
Okay.
So okay, let's start again. Well, not again. We can resume. Oh gosh.
I think before we resume, always just give about 3 seconds silence and then carry on, and then that can give the folks a bit of a space to cut.
Okay.
Or to stitch.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, starting now. So getting on with our presentation, I think a lot of us can identify with this. There's so many misconceptions about working from home, everything from, oh, you live in your pajamas, to you can do whatever you want and your time is so flexible and you must have all the time in the world. I am married without children, so it makes it slightly easier, I think. Lloyd, you've got a few kids at home. I'm sure it makes it a bit more challenging having to explain to the family that no, you aren't always available to do whatever there is in the house.
Oh, absolutely. 2 teenagers, and obviously with me having been working at home for 17 years, they were very young as well, toddlers, and not really listening to, please keep it down, kids. So fortunately, as teenagers, they tend to listen a bit more, but sometimes they forget and it can become challenging. Then a good yell at them from a distance does work.
Usually works. Yeah. Can you still hear me, Lloyd?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, I've got a thing on my screen that says my connection is unstable. Is my voice better yet?
Yes, it's clear now.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to start again with the lag. So if we look at some interesting stats, it's, you know, I find the more and more people you speak to, the more you find that people are starting to work remotely and work from home. And it's not just companies that are cutting down on costs and desk fees, which is a big plus point for them. But I think people, you know, especially with the age of the millennials, you know, having their cake and eat it and being able to eat it, you know, they really are demanding that there be flexibility in work time. So if we look at the stats, we can see that 74% of people in this specific survey said that working from home has become the new normal. And it is something that they look at specifically when they're looking at changing careers or changing jobs. If you can see that there's also been a ginormous jump in working remotely between 2005 and 2017, with 159% increase. And of course, the flexible working schedule is the biggest benefit from working remotely. I think one can debate that, the flexibility of it all. I find, yes, you can, you know, you do have a bit of more opportunity to do the stuff that you want to do or get house chores done. But I think the secret to successfully working from home includes flexibility, but it very much includes a fixed schedule as well that you need to try and stick to as much as possible. For me, that works for myself. I'm completely on my own. So if I want to laze around for 5 days, I can do that. But the real repercussions is that I don't get an income. Lloyd, you can also run around for 5 days if you want to, but you'd probably get fired.
I absolutely would get fired. Being a salaried employee, I do have production quotas, so I need to be able to meet those. And if for some reason I'm able to finish ahead of schedule, I would have the option to obviously do something else to get away from my desk. Or I could use the opportunity to start on the next project, just to take a bit of pressure off the following week. So yeah, but I've definitely got to meet my quotas.
Yes. So if we do, I mean, there are certainly pros to working from home. I mean, there's a reason why it's on the increase globally. I think now with the coronavirus, we are seeing more and more people working from home. And it was quite funny to see a tweet yesterday where somebody mentioned how now we'll see which meetings really could have been emails after all, which I thought was quite funny, because how often do we sit in meetings and think, well, this could have just been an email? And when you start working from home, you start realizing how much you can actually accomplish on your own. And that very same study stated that 85% of businesses confirm that productivity has increased in their company because of greater flexibility. And from my own experience, I've seen, you know, when you're sitting at home and you've got no distractions and there's, you know, you can't lean over the cubicle and start chatting to somebody else, and phones are ringing and everybody every now and again popping into your office and asking a question, you really do just get so much more done, to the point where initially when I started working from home, I'd be done with my work at 2 o'clock in the afternoons and then feel really guilty not working until 5, until I realized that it's not that I'm doing less work, it's just that I get it done so much quicker and I get the afternoon for myself. And forcing myself to sit in front of the laptop is just going to inevitably lead to endless scrolling on social media. So that definitely helps. And you know, in terms of flexi time, if your work allows it, if your company allows it, and you're a morning person or you're a night owl, it certainly gives you the ability to work in the productive zone that suits you. Everybody's got a different productive zone. Not everybody is, super productive from 9 to 5 every day. And if you've got pockets in which you are particularly productive, being able to work from home and utilize that really works to your advantage. Lloyd, you're an early bird yourself.
No, I'm actually more a night owl, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, I would prefer to work later in the day. I don't know why. That is just how I am. Unless there's fishing involved, then I'll get up early in the morning.
So, and what about, I mean, communicating that with your editors? I mean, are you allowed to, do they expect you to, make your presence known at 9 o'clock in the mornings?
They work generally set hours at head office, as far as I understand. And then they will need to have me available if should they need to contact me or need an urgent reply. They might have questions about a story that they're editing. So there is sort of the lack of flexibility in that regard. But if I've got my cell phone available with me, they can give me a call. It's only if they email that I would only be able to see the email once I get to my desk. So yeah, starting late for me personally is not really an option. I try and work sort of a 8 to 5 or 8 to 4 day, just because it synchronizes with head office. Should there be a work that I'm struggling to finish, or there was something that came up during the day that took me away from my desk, that's when I would probably work later in the evening. Hopefully not too late. I just try and get it done, because there's that sense of satisfaction that story is finished. I can wake up tomorrow morning and I don't have to worry about it. I can start with something fresh.
Yes.
I again find it sort of unpleasant to have an unfinished project that is urgently needed by head office or within a day or two.
And if we look at the, in terms of stress levels, that most people are saying that your stress levels are so much less. For somebody that initially didn't particularly like working from home, I really missed the office, but I realized very quickly that whatever, cons there are to working from home, it's certainly not more than working at the office. And I think, different personalities get along with different people. And if you're more of an introvert, you certainly are less stressed when you're working from home. You don't have to paddle through the traffic in the mornings and have that rush of getting to work. And of course, you're just so much more healthier because you're not getting exposure to so many germs. And since I've been working from home, I know my medical bills have certainly come down. I'm not on antibiotics half as much as what I used to be, working in an office with hundreds of people in the middle of Johannesburg.
I would agree with you there. The environmental stress, I would say, is very low. Obviously, working from home, the demands of being a journalist are not going to go away. There is obviously the stress of meeting deadlines and having people not get back to you, etc. But sure, it really is. It is pleasant to be able to be in your own work environment. Where all your coffee and biscuits are. Get up there. As we discussed at a stage, no one's going to steal your lunch if you work from home out of the fridge. So, and then even having the little, my dog's coming up to me and saying, "How's it? How are you doing?" And give them a scratch, and it just sort of perks me up, and I'm ready to carry on. And I think that's what the folks that work in corporate offices, they lose out on that.
Yeah, I must say I agree with that one. Myself being a dog person as well, often in my tea break, I would just go and sit outside with the dogs, and it's just a bit of a quick refresher also. And also just to get you off your feet and moving. I remember when I was still working full time in the office, and that was often a thing for me, is you're bound to your desk. Sometimes you need a break, but where do you go? You're stuck in this office building. So that's definitely a help. And I find also, because you're accountable for your own time, and myself that has my own business, I can use my time more wisely, because I don't have to sit at my desk from 8 till 5 every day. If my work is done at 2 or at 12 or at 10 for that matter, then I can get up and do something else. So I find that the hours that you do spend in front of your laptop are really productive, and you're not messing around. And also, from my point of view, I at least am in a position where I can take as much leave as I like, depending on how much money I want to earn, because for me, it's a no work, no pay situation. So I've had times already where my husband really wants to get away, and he's got quite a bit of leave. And then I just make sure I work a couple of extra nights and catch up. And I've even, worked in the car on the way to the holiday destination, before, but that's okay, because then at least you get an extra holiday in. So in that regard, yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not the person sitting on the beach with the laptop on my lap, that's for sure. But the laptop goes with on holiday sometimes, and it's not always an ideal scenario. But when you're running your own business and you're responsible for clients' work, then you have to be available all the time. So just moving along from the flexi time benefit, I just want to get to the last point, the opportunity to become an expert in your area. What's great about South Africa, and it might be the same wherever you find yourself in the world, is that, we've got pockets of production, certain areas that do certain things. It's certainly, our climate varies drastically across the country. And in the area where I am, for example, subtropical crops are very prevalent, specifically the macadamia industry, which is becoming quite a booming industry here. And I found that, being out here, sometimes it feels like you're limited, because you can't do such a wide range of stories as what everybody else does. Somebody that's in the Joburg office that's more central, where I'm quite far flung to the east of the country. So I pretty much have to focus on what I have in front of me. But I've really found a great benefit in that, because you really can become an expert in your field, because you end up doing kind of the same story over and over, on the same kind of crop. You get to know the people in your industry, you get to know the people surrounding you and the farmers surrounding you, and you start becoming the go-to person. I've found that people have started recognizing me as sort of a go-to for the macadamia industry. So whatever they need, they come to me to get that information, or to help them with their communications. And it's because I've been here long enough to know the industry. And because you're around the corner from the farms, if you have an extension officer going out to a farm for the day, you can easily join him if you've got the time to do so. If it's pruning season and the farmer's doing something interesting on his farm, you can quickly, nip down the road to where one of the farms are and watch the process. So it gives you a good opportunity in that regard. And I've only been here for about 4 years. Lloyd, you've been in your area for many, many years. I'm sure it's the same for you.
Yes, and just adding to what you've said about your area, the advantage of living in a small agricultural town like, well, I live in Mooi River, in KwaZulu-Natal, and it's basically an agricultural economy. And I've got to know the farmers around here. So on a personal and professional level, I've got to know their farms. And this is something that I think people working and living in a city, I think we have an added advantage, Lindy, just that we work from home, but in the countryside. It's particularly in our line of work as agricultural journalists. I mean, some folks might be in the city that are working from home within the city, but they still don't get to socially interact with farmers as often as I imagine they won't, as often as you and I get to do. And I believe that has a lot of advantages to us.
So just on that point, getting to our next slide, sorry, I'm going to just skip one along and then I'll go back again. I've put here as the last point, local politics. When you and I chatted the last time, you said, we were talking about, being involved in the local community, and you were
I've lost you, Lindy. Lindy, you've broken. I can't hear you at all. Still, I can't hear you. Let me just, I'm going to call you.
Are you there, Lloyd?
Yeah, I'm here.
What did you hear last?
You would need to start the local politics totally again. Yeah, it was as soon, like a few seconds after you started discussing local politics, you totally disappeared. Were you hearing me?
No, I couldn't hear anything. It went completely dead.
Yeah, so both of us went completely dead.
Okay. So I'm going to just pick you from that last sentence. I'm just going to start my whole sentence again.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So just picking up from that point, Lloyd, regarding, being ingrained in the community around you, I just want to skip ahead to this slide over here to the last point about local politics. When you and I had a discussion,
can you hear me? This is what's happening to you.
The other day, about, sorry?
Lindy,
Yeah.
you're going to have to, it's happening again. It's amazing. As soon as you talk local politics, this time I could hear you, but you were very distorted.
Okay.
So guess what? Start afresh.
Yeah, it's my flipping internet. Yeah, and this is what you get for living in the sticks.
We must discuss that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start
again. You ready?
Yeah. So just on that point, Lloyd, when you were talking about being so close to the community around you, I just want to skip ahead here to this slide, to the last point about local politics. So what has your experience been when you have a story that you need to cover that is particularly relevant to the community around you? How do you handle that?
Well, yeah, I've done a lot of stories on the farmers around in the Mooi River area. The challenge comes in, unfortunately, it is rare, but the challenge comes in when it's perhaps a controversial issue. For example, quite a few years ago, we had a local farmer who has a national buried fuel pipeline going across his property. And there had been widespread public awareness campaigns. It had just been constructed. Widespread public awareness campaigns, including among the farmers, to be very careful when they're tilling the lands or working with tractors, etc. And this farmer, either he or his tractor driver, ignored those rules and actually punctured the pipe with an implement, and it caused a huge fuel spill with associated environmental concerns. Fortunately, no one was injured. It didn't explode or anything. Could have been a lot worse. And I actually, knowing that farmer, not particularly well, but, he might have friends that are friends with me. And I thought, because this is a controversial story, it would be best to, Farmers Weekly needs to cover it. It's very important. There's a lesson to be learned for other farmers in this whole matter. But I handed it over to a fellow journalist based in Johannesburg, just so that no one could sort of, in this area, I know that I'm a journalist, but I'm also a resident and part of the community here. So I have to look out for my personal interests as well within this community. And so that is why I handed the story over. If the farmer was still decided to be upset with me because Farmers Weekly ran the story that painted him in an unfavorable light, then I'm willing to say, okay, you know what, I'm just going to take it on the chin and move along. but I also want to remain objective. Well, I had to make sure that I would be objective, and the safest would be to hand it over to a colleague. So it's quite a big consideration.
Yes, and I think that's an important point to make, because at the end of the day, yes, you are a journalist, but you're also a member of the community, and it's a community in which you have to live, and you have to, and your friends, at least your children and your wife has to live as well, and you don't want to attract any kind of bad blood between yourself and the family. So yeah, I think that's definitely a very, very good consideration that a person needs to keep in mind when there's something controversial happening.
Yeah, I would say the safest thing. The safest thing is hand it over. It's a logical decision. Hand it over to a colleague. The story must be investigated and written, but you don't have to do it yourself. You need to maintain the status quo. You could be ostracized. I mean, I know it sounds extreme, but the farming community is a small community. Wherever you are, they're generally very tight-knit, and yeah, you're at risk of being subjective in your reporting, and you put yourself at risk of potentially being ostracized, and your family as well.
Yes. So just getting back to my previous slide, I just want to show with the research that has been done, the biggest issues that people have with working remotely. And I think, that's, before I even, came across this research, I put together my own comments, and it's pretty much on par with what Lloyd and I are experiencing. So just moving along to the next one. A person gets used to working in your quiet office environment so quickly that it becomes very difficult concentrating in an office or where it's noisy. And the illusion people have of you sitting in a trendy coffee shop and sipping cappuccinos and doing your work. I must be honest, that doesn't work for me. As soon as I think I want to try it, I spend 10 minutes and my coffee isn't even done yet, and I think I just want to get back home so that I can sit in quiet and work. Lloyd?
Yeah, I would agree. On the rare occasions when I do go up to our head office in Johannesburg, and I've had to finish some work while I'm up there, I've really struggled. I'm not used to having visual stimuli. That's one of the things, while I'm working, and there's people moving around, and there's unfamiliar sounds, and I just get drawn to those all the time, my eyes and my ears. So I don't know whether this is the right time to mention it, Lindy, but one of the coping mechanisms that I use, for lack of a better word, is excuse me. Can we start that one again, Lindy?
Lindy? Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Can we start that difficulty concentrating slide again?
No, that's fine. I'm gonna start. I'm actually and yes, sorry, I forgot. As we mention these challenges, we should also just mention what we found works for us. So yeah, thanks for that. Okay, so I'm going to start again with that. So if we look at the challenges here, that between Lloyd and I, we've realized we both face, is definitely a difficulty concentrating when you're not working at home, because you get so used to this quiet environment that as soon as you are faced with a whole bunch of people and noise, it becomes very, very difficult to concentrate. I find that listening to music helps, but preferably music that hasn't got any English words in it. So if I'm typing an article in English, I'll listen to Spanish music or Cuban music or anything that won't interfere with my thought process. I also, which I know sounds extremely strange, I end up working in my car quite a bit. Because I live so far out of town, if I'm in town and I'm between meetings and I've got time between meetings, I found that going to a coffee shop just isn't productive for me. So I tend to find a parking lot where I know it's safe, where somebody isn't going to grab my laptop. And I sit there and I work, and I find that can actually be more productive than my office, because there's zero interruptions. There's nothing distracting me. It's just me and the laptop, and And I know I've got limited time as well before my next meeting. So it really is about finding what works for you. So how have you tackled that one, Lloyd?
I agree with you with that difficulty concentrating in anywhere that's outside of my home office, simply because it's generally I'm by myself. There are no other people. There are my animals, but I'm used to their sounds. On the rare occasion when I do have to write a story, when I travel up to our head office in Johannesburg, I find the visual and oral stimuli to be very distracting. What I do in a pinch, though, is I would plug into white noise, say on YouTube. I can't listen to music while I work, even if it's classical or has no lyrics. I need that constant, just a constant white noise sound to block out the outside noises. I will still struggle, however, with people say walking past, but I will finish my story. I just won't be as efficient as I would normally be. So ideally, I prefer working at home or in and that's one of the pleasures of working at home. Oh my soul, we're gonna have to start again, Lindy.
Oh, that was fun. I think that's part of it.
So I prefer working in a very quiet environment, sort of a closed room or in my office at home. Like I said, push comes to shove, I'll plug in some white noise and just muddle on through.
So just on that note, as your dogs have prompted us, let's get to pets and children. Everybody's got anecdotal evidence about being on a really important call and having somebody barge into the room or having a dog start barking in the background.
Like now, yes. And it is challenging. I know you've got some pets as well. It's one of the joys of working from home is having your animals and perhaps your children at times when they're not at school. And when you're not talking to anybody on the phone, it's fine. But suddenly you're on a phone call and then my blind parakeet screeches in the background, which he absolutely loves to do when I'm on a call for some reason, or the dogs start barking, or the kids start yelling at each other. It is a challenge. So the best you could probably do is to try and plan by locking your animals out, say for dogs, putting them outside if you're going to have a scheduled important call. Can I just, Lindy, just hold on.
Okay.
Okay, starting again.
I think maybe just start your just end off your last sentence, and then we'll move on to the next point.
Okay. So I think the best for example, pets. If you're expecting an important scheduled call, and you know what time it's going to be, you perhaps lock your dogs outside or move your bird to another room. And also just let your kids know that they just need to keep it down. Toddlers obviously would be a bit more of a challenge. Hopefully you might have another adult around might keep them entertained for a little. But yeah, I just let my teens know that I have a very important phone call, and then they generally just keep it down. And when I'm done, I just open the doors again or tell the kids I'm finished. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I must say I've found, that there's certain rooms in the house that are further away from where the dogs are generally operating. And if I need to make a quiet phone call, then I will just move everything into that room and just sit on the bed and quickly do the phone call and then get back to the office. And then there's also the issue of, because you're working completely on your own, you don't always know what's going on at the office or in the outside world, and you do end up feeling very, very isolated, especially when you hear news a month after it occurred or a week after it occurred. And in my case, working for myself. I don't have an office that's going to keep me informed with stuff that's happening. There's really a very big responsibility on my side to make sure that I am up to date. So whether that means, going through Twitter or making a phone call here and there to somebody who's in the industry just to do a catch up, I find that's very important. Otherwise, it's not just about making sure you got the latest information, but I think it's also, it's just good for your productive frame of mind to know that you are in the loop with things, that you're not sort of sitting at home all alone by yourself and you're just kind of getting further and further away from the industry and from what is happening.
Working for a magazine that's also owned by a corporate. I have found, and my colleagues, I have a number of colleagues that in South Africa that also work from home and other provinces. And we all agree that sometimes we are the last to know of, say, important happenings or change of company policy or something like that, that everybody at the corporate headquarters in Johannesburg would immediately know about, whether it's via the water fountain or even via emails, because our emails, that those of us that work from home are not generally the corporate email addresses. So we might not be on the general corporate emailing list for any important memorandums that are sent out. And then, head office might inadvertently forget to forward it to us until quite a long time later. And sometimes they forget to let us know of they totally forget to let us know of something. So there is that sort of issue. It can be a bit, I don't know, not necessarily distressing, but you just sort of feel a little bit lost and left out. But you eventually catch up, having phone calls or emails with, particularly if you have an office administrator at your head office, perhaps you give them a call once a week or an email once a week to say, is there anything new that I haven't been told about or that folks might have forgotten to tell me that's important and it relates to my work or what I'm doing? That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, and I think I found initially, with some of the magazines that I write for, you send in stories and you don't get a reply or a confirmation of receipt, and eventually you just realize, well, that some people are in the habit of sending an email saying received, and other people are not at all. So working around that, I've addressed it with the office and just found that it is easier if you CC somebody else in, like a managing editor, when you're sending in something to the news editor. I've found, in the past that the news editor will be on leave. Nobody's informed me. I don't know she's on leave. I send stories to the news editor, and 2 weeks later I realized that she was on leave and the stories were never received and they were never used. And as a freelancer, that's obviously a problem, because you only get paid for what gets published. So navigating that, I've just learned to see somebody else in. Linking up with that as well, and it's part of the issue of the tunnel vision as well. What I found enormously important is when you do start getting that sort of scratchy, out of the loop feeling, just to make a phone call to the office, even if it's just to discuss a story or something. Sometimes you phone somebody with a small thing and it ends up being a half an hour discussion, and then through that discussion, extra information comes out that is useful, or they end up mentioning, oh, they actually need an article on this as well, since you're phoning, can you write it for us? So again, the onus is on you to take responsibility in that regard and make sure you stay in touch with people, and just to broaden your horizon as well, because you can get tunnel vision from sitting and working by yourself. You need to be in communication with other people. And I find if I have an opportunity to go to Johannesburg for whatever reason, just to swing by a couple of the offices of the people that I write for, just for a quick hello, how are you? Speak to the subs, speak to the news editor, speak to the editor-in-chief. have a cup of coffee if they've got time. And that I find is a enormous help. I walk away feeling so much more energized and so much less isolated. And then in that sense, I think cabin fever is a very, very big issue, particularly for me. I don't know, I'm sure for the introverts out there, working from home must be wonderful, but I still believe, even if you're an introvert, you still need some level of human interaction. For me, the cabin fever can be quite debilitating, and it ends up affecting my productivity. So my energy levels get so down that I don't even feel like working, and you get to a point where you don't even feel like going out, even though going out is the antidote. And that's where you really need to check yourself, and you need to force yourself to go out. And if it means you have to go out in work hours and have a cup of coffee with somebody, well, do that and catch up your work later. If you can join a specific class after hours, an art class or a yoga class or a gym class, just something that forces you to get out of the house, I find that is also enormously beneficial. Anything just to get contact with the outside world. I'm lucky that I'm married and I've got a husband that comes home in the evenings that I can chat to. For those of you who are working completely on your own, I really would suggest that you find a way to open up communication channels with different people so that you can counter any kind of cabin fever that can creep in. Lloyd, is that something that you experience?
Lindy, yes, you know, even if you are married and I mean you've got kids, you still need to, well, I found, and I am sort of outgoing, I do need to interact with people outside of my immediate family as well, just to get some fresh interactions with people. Yeah, I imagine, you know, you can't just say, for you example, you and your husband, I think you might get tired of seeing him day after day, but the only face that you're going to see day after day, that you need to see some friends, and that's why you have friends as well, is because each of them adds a different dimension to your life. And I think it's important, yes, to go and do something every now and again, go outside, go into town and have some coffee with a friend and catch up. And being left out of the loop, that matter as well. I think it's vitally important that if you have any challenges with, say, meeting deadlines or being able to complete a story, keep your editors updated as regularly as possible. It might seem over the top, but it's happened to me in my early days as a journalist, where I actually got into trouble for oh, sorry about that. Sorry, Lindy. Was
That's
I jumping
fine.
ahead?
Start that sentence again with, you know, were you talking about regular contact with your editor?
Okay. What I find extremely important, and this is based on sort of lessons that I learned early on in my career working from home as an agricultural journalist, is when you are, if you're going to struggle, if you're struggling to meet a deadline for a particular story, for whatever reason, you should keep your editors informed regularly. They are far away. They don't know what your situation is until you tell them. And the times early on, again, when I thought, no, well, I'm just going to try and work on this story and get it done, and hopefully no one from head office will contact me and say, where is it? Maybe I'll be able to squeeze it in before they get hold of me. Those times I've ended up getting into trouble from my editors, who have been waiting impatiently for this, and I said I was going to submit it at a certain time. Whereas I've learned that keeping the editors informed of potential delays or existing delays, generally works out for the best. They can be quite understanding, because now you've been proactive to let them know that this story is going to come in a bit late, so they can juggle their editing schedule and layout schedules, but they know that that story is going to come in a day or two later, but they know that it's coming. And yeah, you just don't get into trouble like as if you just clammed up and hoped that the problem would go away.
Yes, I think communication is definitely the overarching theme when you are working on your own, is that you just have to put a little bit extra effort in to make sure that people around you are kept in the loop and that you're also kept in the loop. The other thing, of course, relating to that is having reliable communications and equipment. And, I mean, even throughout this webinar, we're struggling with our signal, because that is just the reality of staying in a remote area. Sometimes you just don't have the connectivity that you need. I've found sometimes there have been times when I've had to drive around, maybe sometimes driving to the top of a hill to try and get enough signal just that I can send something. But in extreme situations, I've already had to just let the office know that I actually can't send something at the moment because the power is out and the signal is down.
Yeah, that's happened a lot to me too. And being in a satellite office, although my laptop belongs to the magazine, and so does my telephone and the Wi-Fi modem. When these pack up, IT is not just around the corner. I now need to take time out of my day to either get these things repaired at another location, and being in a rural farming community, sometimes it's an hour away. Or having to wait for a repair person to come in, as we all know, repair people run to their own schedule. So yeah, it's another particular challenge that we have. Lindy, I'm sure when your laptop packs up, I know that it belongs to you, but you live quite a long way from town, so it's a real problem for you to get all the way there and have to wait and then get it back to finish your story.
Yeah, and for sure, I mean, making sure, I mean, it's a golden rule that anybody should keep in any case, is just make sure your stuff is backed up, because you're not connected.
Absolutely.
You're not connected to the big servers and in an office that back up everything as you work. You need to make sure that your stuff is backed up, so that if a laptop gets stolen or if it crashes suddenly, at least you got your work on the cloud somewhere that you can access from another computer if you need to. The other issue I wanted to speak about, which is something that I learned was quite important, was investing in yourself. By that I mean, when you start working for yourself, you start watching your sense, and the money you are spending and what you're getting in quite closely. Initially, I was in a type of frame of mind where I didn't want to attend a conference that was 300 kilometers away, that was going to cost me a heap of money in transport fees if I wasn't going to get sufficient stories out of it, or if somebody wasn't going to pay for my transport costs. But I realized very quickly that by attending conferences, it helps with the cabin fever, it takes the tunnel vision away, it helps you to meet new contacts, it energizes you, it just gives you a new outlook on things. It can be a very, very rewarding experience. And I found if I pick my conferences carefully, if I make sure I can get enough stories out of them, if I make sure I get, to the hub at least every 6 weeks, then it's got so much benefit for me as a person that even if it does end up costing me more than what I can make out of it. So what's also really important when you are working in an isolated office is to have reliable communications and equipment. This is not always possible by virtue of you being in an isolated office. We all know that the signal isn't always so great out in the rural areas. So I found that it necessitates a little bit more planning on my side. I know, for example, there are days when I've got good signals and bad signal. It's not always predictable, but for example, if it's really rainy and misty, I know it affects the tower. Or if I know I happen to be going into town for the morning and I've got a lot of photos that need to be uploaded, then I'll take my laptop with me. And then just, either quickly in my car or in a coffee shop or wherever I've got a moment, just start uploading the photos. Likewise, sometimes for telephone conversations that I know are going to be long, and where you really need to focus, and you just can't quite deal with, with a faulty line, or with there being interruptions in the reception. I also try and do those when I'm in town where possible. Otherwise, what I've already done is I've asked the service provider to if they can have a look at the signal at our house. I know every service provider will be different, and every country has got their own way of dealing with stuff like that. But in South Africa, I've found that it does actually help to go to the service provider if you can justify that your area needs a boost in reception. They've actually been able to do that for me, and since then I actually haven't had any problems. So getting to the fifth point then, invest in yourself. This was something that I learned quite early on when I started working for myself. I realized I wasn't always going to get an opportunity to attend the conferences in the city, or any of the events where some of my peers would be, or the kind of industry contacts that you need to get in touch with as often as possible, just to make sure that you are in the know. So I realized that I would have to spring for those costs myself. For me, it's been absolutely worth it. It costs me my fuel to get, to do a 3 or a 4 hour journey. There are other costs involved, but the way I see it, it's professional development. I'm the money maker in my business, and for that, I need to be functioning at my optimum. So for you that's sitting on your own somewhere in your isolated office, decide for yourself what you need to be functioning at your optimum. Does it mean that you need to be in the loop with what is happening outside in the agricultural world? Does it mean you need more contact with farmers? Do you need to get more conferences, where there's networking opportunities? Do you need to see other like-minded people, agricultural journalists like yourself, or people working in the PR industry? Or maybe you just need to get out and exercise. Maybe you need to sign up for yoga classes, whether that means you need to drive some distance to get to those classes. Really have a look and see for yourself what you need to make yourself tick. We have discussed cabin fever, and I think it is one of the biggest risks when you're working on your own, and sometimes you just need to step outside of the office and just broaden your horizon a bit. I've also found that being involved with an organization like the Agricultural Writers Association of South Africa and the IFAJ has also given me a large opportunity to expand my horizon and to speak to people who can broaden my mind. So if ever I get an opportunity to come into contact with those people, then I do that, even if it means that it's costs that not being covered by a company, but being covered by myself. Lloyd, I don't know if you want to pitch in there, if you've got some comments on that point.
No, to be honest, you might have to cut this out. The invest in yourself thing, being a full-time, fully employed journalist, we don't, I use the work functions, the functions that I attend as an opportunity. And I have the added benefit of obviously my employer paying for my travel costs to get to these events. And so they are definitely beneficial. There are obviously some events that I would like to go to as well, on a personal level, that perhaps aren't directly related to my work, but that could benefit me in some way. But sometimes they can sort of price themselves quite steeply, so I might just have to avoid going to those. But I do get a lot of value from the work in being an agricultural journalist and being involved in agriculture, and going to these events generally gives me a lot of personal development as well as an agricultural journalist, not just for the benefit of our readers.
Yeah, and I find it's the type of stuff that that energizes me. It really recharges my battery, and in that sense,
me that is the moneymaker, you know, the moneymaker needs to have charged batteries in order to be the moneymaker. And yes, the costs can be quite steep and prohibitive sometimes. So what I find is useful is I decide for myself beforehand. I know more or less what conferences are coming up for the year. And then I have a look and see which ones are worth it, which are the ones where the most industry role players are going to attend, or the most agricultural journalists are going to attend, people that I know are going to recharge my batteries, people that I know have got a lot of information that they're sitting on that they can share with me, and just broaden my horizon and just energize me a bit and get me a bit more motivated. You know, because sometimes you do just get stuck in a slump. So what's important then also for me is just to make sure that as a freelance journalist, I can get enough stories out of those conferences so that I'm not just going to recharge my batteries, but that there's actually a recharging of my bank account through the process as well. So then moving on to the next point, you know, it comes down to the same principle in terms of self-motivation. It's very, very important to stay self-motivated when you work for yourself, and when you work on your own, when you don't have a boss leaning over your shoulder. There's some people that can do it. There's some people that can't. Some people work better on their own. Some people need a bit of supervision. But what's important is that you are able to self-motivate. If you're in a slump, you need to find a way to get out of it. I've found that there's days where you just really have no energy, where you just can't bring yourself to write. In that sense, I've already written stuff where I've reread stuff that I've written on days like that and thought, oh gosh, what was I thinking? Fortunately, I've had a chance to edit it, but the benefit of working for yourself at home, not in an office, is you can afford yourself some leniency in that regard, as long as there isn't a deadline that you have to stick to that day. I've already, you know, played off things and said, well, you know, if today's really such a bad day, then fine, don't work. But then, you know, you got to work double as hard tomorrow. And for me, that helps in terms of in terms of keeping myself motivated, and actually getting the work done when there's a lot of distractions at home. Lloyd, how do you manage that?
Okay, being an employed journalist, we have those deadlines that are given to us for stories. So, and I have a fairly strong work ethic when it comes to, I realize that the magazine, well, I've learned that the magazine is a voracious beast. It's forever hungry, and it needs, you know, it needs stories. And the editors, they, you know, if they're running short on stories for whatever reason, it puts a lot of stress on them as well. So even if I'm having a sort of, I get sort of having a lazy day as such, or feeling lazy, let's say that way, I know that I've got to still, you know, kick my own butt and get cracking. People need my content. And ultimately the readers need the content. The magazine goes out every week, and the printers want it at a certain time, and I need to get with that. I find that that's a huge motivation. As is, if I, again, as you said, if you sort of leave something, you know that tomorrow you're going to have to do double the work. And I'd rather do one portion of the work today and the second portion tomorrow, instead of having to do two portions in the same day, which then is going to impact the quality of your writing. You're going to be absolutely bushed after that. And when you go back and read it again, you're probably going to say, you know, that wasn't a wise idea. I could have written this better, and it was just because I was tired and rushed. So I think also experience, long time experience working at home. I've learned, you know, how long something theoretically should take me to do, and to achieve, you know, the best quality that I can. But be that as it may, I have a full week generally. I have stories to write every week. If I'm not in the office, if I'm out visiting people to interview farmers, I come back and there's going to be still a lot of writing to be done. I have a quota to meet. I have to stick to it. And again, I have to kick my own butt, make sure that I'm on the ball.
So I've moving to the next point, I learned something quite valuable at the Ag Media Summit last year in Washington. We were in a session and somebody was asking about writer's block. And the answer that came up during that session was, if you're stuck, get moving. And I've since researched that, and there's a theory behind what is moving stays moving. And I found that it's actually such a wonderful way just to sort of wake up your brain. If you've been sitting in front of your computer for so long and you just feel like you're staring at the screen and you're struggling and it's like you're treading through molasses and you just can't get the words out, get up, jump up and down, do a couple of jumping jacks. That's the beauty of being able to work from home, is that you can do stuff like that and nobody's going to look at you funny. Walk to the gate and back, go outside, rub the dogs, but definitely get your heart rate pumping. And there's just something about the blood flow that starts moving through your body, that starts moving through your brain as well. And you would be amazed at how quickly that works to actually get your brain moving. And I've already sat with pieces where I've done that a couple of times. Write a couple of paragraphs, get up, do a couple of jumping jacks, sit down, write a few paragraphs. It probably sounds absolutely absurd if anybody has to watch me through a window, but it really does work. Then I'd like to talk about having a dedicated workspace. I think in terms of getting your brain into a pattern and into a routine of what is work time and what is leisure time when you're working from home, it's important that your brain can recognize what spaces are there for focus and what spaces are there for leisure. So find yourself a space where you can feel productive. And in this sense, I really don't believe that there's a one size fits all. I really think that, to each its own. Some people honestly do their best work in their pajamas in bed. Some people need a study where there's a dedicated desk and it looks all business-like. Other people can write at the kitchen table. Some people can write while they're watching the TV. I think it's important that you know what works for you and what brings out the best work. But certainly, I think I've found in my experience, your brain just somehow needs to get into a mode of working, and thereby it associates certain spaces with work. So if you can get that association going, it'll be a lot easier for you to start work and get into your work mode in the morning than what you're sharing spaces between leisure and work. Lloyd?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if it was my turn there.
Sorry.
I agree. Again, my experience, it was more a case of practice makes sort of close to perfect. You need to learn over time to find if you're working from home and you're starting out working from home, it's going to take you a while to find what works for you. And eventually you will. For example, as you were saying, Lindy, I need to have a desk. I can't sit in bed and type on my laptop or at the kitchen counter. My desk is my writing space. If I really have to, if I really have to, I'm on an international trip somewhere and I sit at the desk in the hotel room, it still doesn't feel as comfortable for me writing there as my own desk. My own desk may look like a tornado has gone through it, but I know what's going on here. And I find, for me personally, this is my most productive workspace. But it's not one size fits all. But you will find your place as you go, as time progresses, and what works best for you.
Yeah. So I think that, that summarizes the last 2 points as well. I think some people are able to work from home and others can't. I know as we're facing the coronavirus and the spread, more and more people are having to work from home. Some people are doing it for the first time. I know that unfortunately, most people's first time experience is probably not going to be overly positive, considering that the children are also homebound now. And I've heard a lot of anecdotal evidence of people not quite managing. But I think it is something that takes getting used to. There are people that enjoy it from day one. People like myself that said that they would, I said I would never work for myself. I would never work from home. I always want to be in the office, want to be around people. Circumstances change, and sometimes you are forced to do something that you don't necessarily want to do. But with time, you actually find to enjoy it and you find to love it. I think what's very important is you need to understand how your brain works. You need to understand how you function as a human being. When is your most productive times? When are your most creative times? Lloyd, as you mentioned earlier, how long does it typically take you to perform a task, to write an article, to write a press release, so that you can plan your day properly? There definitely needs to be structure in your day, just as you would need structure in your office. I think if you plan on getting anything done consistently, you need to have a schedule of what is going on in terms of appointments, in terms of deadlines. You have to keep track of those type of things so that you can pace yourself as well. If you don't necessarily have an office that you're going to where you're there from 9 to 5 every day, and well, you'll get something done between 9 to 5. You're working from home, you can plan your own schedule. There is the bonus in that when your work is done, you can do what you like. At the same time, you don't want to be taking 10 hours to do something that usually took you 6, and then you start eating into your family time. So scheduling is very important. Structure is very important. And understanding how you as a human being operate and work so that you can find your optimal production zone and use the space that you have at home to your advantage. Lloyd?
Yeah, humans are an adaptable bunch. If you're having to work from home suddenly because of the coronavirus, you will eventually get used to it. We may not like change, but when we're forced into it, we tend to adapt to it fairly well. On that topic of, and I've just gone blank now. Sorry, edit this out. Just oh man, it's not for everyone. Dedicated workspace.
Routine, structure, adaptable.
Adaptability. Oh, okay. Just give me a 2-second silence.
Okay.
And then, we agricultural journalists have quite a sort of roller coaster life. We cover a lot of diversity. It may be the agricultural sector, but we tend to cover a lot of diverse topics within agriculture. And then, of course, there's the traveling and the writing, planning, and toting your stuff along with you, cameras, etc. That also takes a bit of getting used to. And I think planning, as Lindy said, planning is going to help you to sort of strategize and take a bit of that panic away. I know that I can get a bit panicky when it feels like I'm becoming overwhelmed with deadlines and important stories, and there's no one really to talk to in the immediate vicinity, just casually, and get a bit of reassurance from them. But if push comes to shove, make a phone call to an editor, have a talk, tell them that you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and stressed, because when you're feeling that way, and if you're not going to get some support, you're not going to be productive. So use that lifeline as well. Phone one of your favorite editors, the ones that you get along with the best, or one of your fellow journalists. They are often will have been in the same boat as you, so will understand how you're feeling, and it just helps to break that sort of stress cycle a bit, and give you a breather, and then you can come back to your desk and carry on that story with a sort of a fresh mind and organized mind.
For sure. So thank you everybody for tuning into our first webinar for the professional development sessions for the IFAJ. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to email myself, Lindy, or Lloyd at the email addresses displayed on the screen. If you've got any suggestions for upcoming webinars that you would like the organization to address, stuff that you are wondering about or struggling with, or any areas of professional development that you think would be useful for us to address during these webinars, please do let us know. And with that, we'd like to say good luck to all of you working on your own. We hope that you found...
Yes, all of the best.
Yes, and good luck during this time with coronavirus. I think all of us are going to be a bit more isolated than what we usually are. So remember to get up, get moving, and don't let cabin fever get you down.